Hi there, it's 8 o'clock, so I should make a start. I'm hoping that you can see ideas to set dyslexic learners up for academic success. So the webinar will start now. I've said please make sure your microphones are muted. You've all done very well there. I also want to tell you that while this is being recorded, I feel confident nobody's picture will be on it now, because last time nobody's was, and I've now got 2 monitors, so I'm only recording 1 monitor. So if you do feel brave, you can show me your face and I won't feel like I'm talking to just a pile of black boxes, which is easier, but I don't blame you if you don't switch it off. But I just find it easier talking to people rather than black boxes. And thank you for those of you that have said where you are joining from. Now, at the moment, according to Zoom, I have 21 participants and I think over 200 people signed up. So I guess a lot of people, and I told them to do this as well, they just want the recording. So, but I imagine we might get a few more beeps. So if you're wondering what the beeps are, that's just people arriving. But I won't wait for them because I have got so much to go through that I'm just going to make a start, and hopefully they won't miss too much. So next thing, this is what you're here for. If you actually read any of the publicity I sent out, it sounded a lot more arrogant. It was set dyslexics up for academic success, or how to set dyslexics up. And I think really when you've got to be succinct or get people's attention, then these short, sharp things work. But really, this is about ideas to set dyslexic learners up. I'm not the font of all knowledge. I cannot say to you, oh, if you do A, B, and C, your child will be set up absolutely for success. But what I can do is give you some ideas and make you aware of some pitfalls, and just tell you some of the stuff that I wish that I'd known. So I hope you've done all your jobs for this evening, that you've got a drink. I've got my water. But I hope you've got a drink and that you can just relax. You don't have to take notes. I'm going to make sure I get all the PowerPoints to you, and all the PowerPoints will have links in that you can click on to get more information. So don't feel you've got to get everything down. I can't promise you that they'll be out tomorrow, but maybe the next day or the day after. But I will get them out to you soon, because this is one of the last jobs I'm going to do before I go on my summer vacation. So I'm keen to do it, get it out to you, and then start to spend some time with the family. So this is probably the least salesy and the least professional webinar you're ever going to see. The way I want you to think about this is it's just basically a chat with a parent who is probably a little further along the journey than you. And I know for me, whenever a mum would grab a coffee or a wine with me that had children that were older, that had gone through similar problems, it was just so great just to talk to them and think, really? Or what's this school like? Or what should I be asking for? And I just found that really, really helpful. And I was always prepared, because I was the woman with 3 dyslexic kids. If anyone else found out their kids were dyslexic in the school, they'd always say, oh, why don't you talk to Caroline? So I was forever going to Costa or having a drink here, there, and everywhere with people. So this webinar is just really a bigger version of that. And very often companies do webinars when they want to promote something, you know, and at the end you get a 50% offer if you do it in the next 2 days or something, or the next 4 hours. There's nothing like that. I'm not going to try and sell anything. I am just going to share some information. And truthfully, I'm doing it now because I had to cancel an awful lot of workshops in over the pandemic, and it just seemed crazy to me. At the very time when parents needed all the support they could get, I was cancelling workshops. And because I've been using Zoom to teach kids, I thought, well, I've got the account, it doesn't cost me anything, so I'll just do something for parents too. So it really is that informal. This is the second of 2 webinars. The first was Technology to Transform Learning, and that was done a month ago. And this is now Ideas to Set Up Dyslexic Learners for Academic Success. Truthfully, when I run a workshop, it normally runs for at least 2 hours, and I actually combine both those things. So the tech to transform and the ideas to set up, they are really intertwined. And because the way webinars are is you can't have a really, really long webinar. So I split them, but really they are intertwined. So if you have not seen the first webinar, I really would recommend it, because I'm not going to repeat anything that was on there. So if you click that link when you get the PowerPoint, then that will take you through to the webinar. And later on, I will be trying to sort of merge the two together so you can work out where to find information that's pertinent to both of them. So the first one is like what tech was available. So I showed an awful lot. I was showing videos, I was showing solutions. This isn't like that. This is now stepping back and thinking, well, why would you use that technology? When? What else besides technology is helpful? So they're the 2 webinars. I really do recommend that you watch that one. But I've got a quick poll because, well, actually, I've got a bit more information, I think, before I do the poll. This is just to let you know that that was the backbone of my last webinar, and this is the backbone of this webinar. So they're what I'm going to try and link together. These now are my webinar objectives. So I want to equip parents to help dyslexic children achieve their potential. And the title says academic success. And I do believe that a lot of dyslexics can do a lot better academically than initially people think they can. But not everybody is going to do great academically. I think what I'm more concerned about is that our children leave school confident, fulfilled, and contributing members of society, that they're not damaged by school. And I think school has the potential to damage our children. So what I want to do is I want to save you time by making you aware of issues and explore ways to overcome these issues, but also to provide information to find out more. I'm going to go through an awful lot of stuff. I'm only going to give you small amounts of information, but if it's pertinent to you, you will have lots of opportunities to find out more. So in the next 1.5 hours, we're going to get to know one another a little bit. I'm going to give you my recipe for academic success. That's what I teach my kids in my after school clubs, and it's what I teach kids that I do one-to-ones with. I'm then going to look at the biggest obstacle to academic success. And one of the reasons I'm doing that, I always look at it, but when we had the last webinar, the questions afterward were very much about touch typing and confidence. And it's a lack of confidence is the biggest obstacle to academic success. So I made sure I put that in. I'm hoping to do this. I'm thinking of having a sort of a 5-minute break where you can go and get yourself a refill of a drink. And then I'm going to have a go at answering questions. That's assuming that anyone's still around and we haven't all gone to bed. So if you remember last time, I didn't even attempt to answer questions because this is just me on my own. I haven't got any admin fielding the questions. I'm dyslexic, so I don't find it easy reading the chat at the same time as giving a presentation. So I didn't even bother last time. I might try this time. We'll just see how the time is going. And if you've got questions, so if you've got questions, we'll have a quick break and then we'll get back together if you want to. So that's what I'm planning on doing on this 1.5 hour session. All slides and recordings will be made available, and I am going to give you far more slides than I can talk through, just so you have the information there. But if you see me skipping through them, that is the reason why. So let's get to know each other a bit. Who on earth am I and what qualifies me to do this? Well, I feel like I have to explain because Achieve Now can make me sound a lot bigger and a lot grander than I am. It's me. I am Caroline Bateman. And I could have been just called Caroline Bateman Learning Consultant or Learning Strategy Consultant, or yeah. But my daughter, who's 15, came up with, well, she was 15 at the time, she's 20 now, came up with the idea of Achieve Now. And I thought it was a good name because I'm all about helping dyslexics achieve their potential. So I like that very much. I do have help. This is Emma. She does all my proofreading for me. I am absolutely rubbish in writing. And Emma isn't dyslexic. She has one dyslexic son, Jamin. He was on my first after school club. And she really appreciated what I did and wanted to help me and could see all the errors that I had on my webpage. So Emma's kind of been helping me for the last years, but she's very much sort of part-time admin and, you know, does her own thing as well. So why I started doing this is all three of my kids are dyslexic. That was a big shock until I realized I'm really obviously dyslexic, although I didn't know it going through school. My husband's obviously dyslexic now. He didn't know it going through school. We both did really well academically, but all three of our kids were completely failing in education. They really weren't doing well, to the extent that I had to give up. I didn't have to, but I decided to give up my career in the IT industry because I just felt like, you know, they are going to completely fail in school if I don't support them. And we were lucky enough that I didn't have to work. So that's what I did. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but it's what I felt I needed to do. And this was actually taken 5 years ago when they were doing okay. And the reason why I wanted to start the consultancy was I felt like I'd learned so many great things that, you know, it was really hard to learn them. And I thought parents everywhere are recreating the wheel. I want to pass on what I've learned. So that was my motivation. It was to provide the support that I wished that my family had had. And 5 years later on, my kids are all doing very well academically now. When I teach dyslexic students now, I often get them involved to explain, you know, what they used to struggle with and what helped them. I show their reports because it's easy to say, oh, my kids used to struggle and now they're doing great. No, they really did used to struggle, and I often share their reports with students, but they're all doing great now. And I tell you that not so I can say, oh, you know, aren't I great? No, I want to give hope. You know, if your kids are really struggling at school, it doesn't mean they're always going to struggle. It absolutely can help them. So that's my kids. So Achieve Now, my strapline is empowering dyslexics or transforming learning. And it's all about passing on what I've seen work. And for the last 5 years, I found it very slow and hard work passing it on because most schools don't realize they don't know it and therefore don't get me in. So I tend to be working with families, and you can only help one family at a time. And I feel like, goodness, this is so good. And a lot of this is what I did on the last webinar. So I'm not going to try and repeat that. So what's happened post the pandemic, well, prior to the pandemic, I started to create videos because I felt like I've got to get this message out. Too many families are all struggling with the same thing. So I started to create videos. I've got a YouTube channel, and I create quite a lot of free ebooks. I think I've got 5 or 6 free ebooks, and I started doing free webinars in the pandemic. And I really feel like the pandemic's been really helpful for me. I've been super busy trying to support parents, but I've realized now I can get out to more people if I work like this through webinars. So rather than waiting for the BDA or a Patos group to invite me to speak, I can just do things on my own, which I find really, really helpful. So this is who is signed up. Now, we've got 45 participants at the moment, and I think I took this when it was about 170. So this may not equate to who's actually here, but we have 80% parents, 14% both educational professional and 6% educational professionals. Those educational professionals who are not parents, who have given up their holiday, I respect and admire you for doing so, so thank you. But it is very much aimed at parents. So that's the right demographic. These are the children that you have, and what we have is we have an awful lot under 11 and under 13. 10 years and under. So I'm really glad that we have this kind of profile, because once you get to 13, 18, it does get a lot more difficult. Not with all children. With all of this, all children are very, very different, but it is better to get in early, and we will definitely talk about that. And I'm really encouraged that the majority of you haven't been to one of my workshops in person, but what I didn't ask, what I would like to ask now is, I would love to know how many people actually watched the first webinar. So whether you attended it in person or you watch the recording, it would be really helpful for me to know whether you did or not. So thank you for voting or polling. So there's quite a few. I'm not going to show you yet because people haven't finished voting. Just a few more votes. Go on, or I'll just finish it. You either have or you haven't. So that would be good. I'll end the polling now. There's quite a few haven't watched it. So can I really encourage you? I am not repeating anything because there's so much really useful information I want to share. I thought, oh, I'm not just going to say the whole thing again. So I actually watched it myself today to make sure that I wouldn't repeat it. But when I send you the PowerPoints, you will be able to watch it on YouTube. You can't go and search for it on YouTube because people ask questions, and I felt like I wanted to, have some respect for people's privacy in that I don't have it there for anyone to watch. But as long as you've signed up for the webinar, I'll make it available to you. So thank you so much for answering that poll. That helps me, but only in so much as I'm still not going to repeat anything, but it will help me to maybe explain the odd thing a little bit more, but go back and watch the recording. So why on earth do we need a webinar about setting our dyslexic kids up for academic success? Why do parents need that? That you don't get those webinars on the whole for kids that aren't dyslexic or kids that don't have learning difficulties or differences. And I think it's because our dyslexic kids really need our support, because the school system is does not meet their needs. It's not designed to meet their needs. It's designed to meet the needs of children that read in order to learn and write in order to be assessed. And because of that, it can really damage our kids. And I think there are lots of, very bright dyslexics at school who have no idea they're dyslexic, and they only find out when they're at university, and that's great. But there's an awful lot of kids that are really struggling at school. And I just think if parents know how to support their learning, it can really, really help. I'm not going to talk through this, but this is an article, the link is here, an article that was in the Independent in August last year, just saying how schools discriminate against students with special needs, particularly the exam system. And so it is set up against our children without a doubt, and we need to be aware of that in order to help them overcome it. Sorry, I will stop sharing I haven't actually shared the results with you. I'm sorry. I'm rubbish at Zoom. Please forgive me. So I'll stop sharing those results and on we go. So this now is what I show to what I used to show to my after school club students. This was kind of like my recipe for success. This is what you need to do if you want to do well in your GCSEs. I think almost everyone here is from the UK, not everybody. GCSEs, or there are formal exams at 16. They're done. We have 2-year syllabus. It starts in year 10, goes through year 11. And I normally teach this to students when they're in year 9, because I feel like if I teach them how to do these things well in year 9, then once the GCSE series starts, then they're in a good situation. So this is a timeline. This is September from year 10, goes through to the summer of year 11. And I say to my students, look, if you want to do well in exams, you need to pay attention in class, and you need to understand what the teacher is saying. Like, make an effort to actually engage with the lesson and understand it. Take comprehensive notes if you possibly can. And that is something that's very difficult for dyslexics. But in my after school clubs, I give them strategies for how to pay attention, how to take comprehensive notes, how to complete all the coursework, because it's much easier to revise if you've done all the coursework and you've got good marks than it is if you haven't. And then I teach them how to revise. And truthfully, schools do really well at teaching biology and history and science, but they don't necessarily teach our children how to learn. And for your average child, maybe they don't need to know that till the learning load gets a lot bigger. But our kids need to know how to learn. And strangely enough, I did really well because I figured out how I learned, and I thought everybody learned like me until I had dyslexic kids in dyslexia-friendly schools, and I saw how they were being taught to memorize, and I thought that's rubbish. They'll never know how to learn how to do that. And then I realized I had a technique that most people didn't have, which is why I love teaching dyslexic study skills. So all of that is what I teach my dyslexic students. And I tell them, if you do all that between September year 10 and May year 11, then the very last month you can spend it just doing past papers, because you've already done all your revision notes, you've learned stuff. And so now you are, you can just concentrate on past papers, and you learn how to answer questions, and you learn time management, because every formal exam is a test of speed as well as knowledge. So learning what the examiner's wanting to know is really important, and learning time management is really important. And I tell my students, if you do those things, you will do well. Now, that's what the students need to do. But what else affects their exam results? Now, their exact access arrangements, and I'm going to explain what they are if you don't know, but access arrangements are the provisions that are put in place to help our children to even the playing field. So they have to be in place. They need to be able to read quickly and accurately. I've already said that every exam is a test of speed as well as knowledge. So if a child reads slowly and has to reread a lot in order to understand what the question is asking, there is a disadvantage. So anything we can do to help improve reading is great. Every exam now has a spelling and grammar mark. Now, when I was at school, I did exams because no one really cared how I spelled. It was obvious what I was trying to say, but I couldn't spell, but I didn't get any marks deducted. And now they do. And kids tend to get really anxious about that, but it's not a lot of marks, but it is true that they do deduct marks all the time now. We need to teach our children to enjoy learning. There's more to learning than copying things down from the board. And if they understand they enjoy learning, they understand that they're intelligent, even though the way they learn isn't necessarily the way the school teaches them. We need to teach them how to memorize and recall information. There's an opportunity to help our children improve their working memory. And we need to teach them how to communicate legibly, because every student needs to be assessed, and they're normally assessed in writing. If students are very dyslexic, sometimes they can have a scribe or they can dictate in exams, but that's actually quite unusual. So most students have to either write or type. So helping them to type quickly or write quickly and legibly in a finite time period is really, really helpful. Now, all of these things impact on a student's results, but what I would say is once year 10 starts, it's too late to be teaching them how to revise, how to type, how to spell, how to read quickly, because they've got too much biology, they've got too much history, they've got too much science to learn. So anything else you give them outside of that is just too much. So it's overwhelming. So the earlier you start, which is why I said this is good for parents who've got kids from 6 onward. And GCSEs may seem an awfully long way away now, but the sooner you start working out, oh, actually, if I put that in place now, it will make it easier. So that's what we're going to be talking to tonight. So this is what I'm planning on covering. We're going to talk about access arrangements. I won't read them all out, but all those additional things there that you don't have time to do once GCSE start, I'm going to be talking about quickly now. Obviously, that's a lot of things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to give about 5-6 minutes to each one, but I will give you information where you can find more information afterward. So straight away, let's get on with it. And we'll look at access arrangements. You know, this is a definition of access arrangements. It talks about candidates and exams. These are typical access arrangements. You might get extra time, you might get a reader. There's lots of different things that you can get, but I think the best way I can describe this to you in a short period of time is to tell you my own experience. This is my son, George, and he's 18 now. When he was in year 7, 8, 9, he just couldn't read. He just could not read. And he felt like, I don't need to read, reading's stupid. I'm not even going to try. If I tried to get him to read, there would be, I tried to do toe by toe with him, and I think it damaged our relationship forever. He really was very resistant to reading. I used to work with him. He's a bright boy, and I used to revise with him like crazy. Remember, I've given up work and I'm helping him. I'm sorting out his rubbish class notes at the end of the day, and I'm helping him learn the facts, and I'm reading the textbooks to him. And I really prepared him for exams. And he'd go in, and I think he really knows that. And he'd get a D, or at best he'd get a C. And I was thinking, but he knew that. So what I asked the school is, I said, can I just see his exam papers? I am not questioning that you've given him the right mark, but I just feel like he was really well prepared. So I want to see where he's going wrong so I can help him in the future. And when I looked at his exam papers, I was just amazed at how little he wrote. He just ran out of steam after the second page. So there were pages and pages of questions that he didn't even read. And his teacher said to me, and I'll always remember, it was a parent teacher's in Kingswood House School, and she said to me, Georgie needs a reader and a scribe in exams. And I said, no, I really don't want that. He's just really lazy. And if we give him a reader and a scribe, he's never, ever going to learn to read. He's never going to persevere. And she said to me, with a room full of other parents all waiting to be seen, she said, Georgie's a lot of things, but he's not lazy. He works really hard. And I think I just burst out crying there and then. I just saw, I'm so hard on my son. And she really pushed me to get him a reader and a scribe. And if she hadn't, I think his life would be really, really different. And I'll show you why. These were his exam results. This is when he was at Kingswood. These were his exam results before his access arrangements were in place. And, you know, you can see that they're not all Ds, but they're not fantastic. And these are the results once he got access arrangements in place. They're very, very different. And what was happening is my son, because I forced him, worked really, really hard for that geography exam, got a D. For that history exam, got a C. For that English exam. And I think what happens if you work really hard and then your grade does not reflect the amount of effort you put in, you just assume you're thick. You just think, well, I'm not very academic, forget it. And he would have totally given up on education. And yet, he didn't do his A-levels because of the pandemic, but he is predicted A star, A star, A star. And if he didn't have those access arrangements in place, he wouldn't have been predicted that. He wouldn't have even gone to sixth form because he'd have been so exhausted, frustrated, and fed up with getting rubbish marks. He'd have gone a completely non-academic route. You know, he'd have been being a plumber or a builder, and he'd have probably done very well. But, you know, because the access arrangements were in place, he's going to study pure maths at university. Still doesn't read very well. He scraped a 4 in his English language. So, and this is what I normally show when I'm working with dyslexics. And this is because even though a lot of dyslexics are allowed access arrangements, a lot of them don't want to use them because they don't want to be any different to their friends. And that's why getting them in place early is really good, and they just accept it early. They become far more resistant later. And you know, as I say, he has a bright academic future, plus he has great friends. He owned it. He never feared being exposed. He just took all the help that was offered, and it's never ever done him any harm. I've just added this graphic to explain access arrangements. You can read that on your own. And here I found some more information for you. This was a lovely video I found today for the first time. I'd really recommend it. She explains it very well. This is 5 years old, something that the BDA put together about using technology. And I really do think the way ahead is using technology for our children to do exams, because let's face it, when they get into the workplace, they'll be using technology every day. So why not use it when they do exams? And the JCQ has made it much, much easier for dyslexics to use technology in exams, and yet a lot of schools don't understand that and they're not utilizing it. So I keep telling parents every opportunity I have, and I talk about it briefly here. So this is just a quick introduction. This tells a bit more detail, and this goes into a lot more detail, but it is 5 years old and I couldn't find an update. But I would really recommend finding out more information about access arrangements. So the next thing we looked at is the ability to read and comprehend quickly. And this is where I talked about this a lot in the last webinar, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail now, but I just thought I would show you this. These are the graphics that I use to show the technology to help us learn to read, or students learn to read, technology to encourage reading, technology to read in order to learn. And then when you revise, you have to read an awful lot of books, and technology to read in exams, because as I've said, exams are a finite test of speed, and you can have computer readers read to the student in exams. It's far better than having a human reader. It's classed as independent work, so it's easier to get as an access arrangement. And for schools, it's easier because when you have a human reading to you, you have to go into a separate room, because obviously it would disturb everybody else. But with a computer reader, all you've got to do is wear headphones and you can have the exam read to you. And then there's no chance of misreading the question and then spending ages writing a fantastic answer that didn't answer the question. So computer readers and exams, and here you see these are all different videos. And I think this is probably a good time just to flick over here and show you where these resources are. So this is my website. This is the Achieve Now website. And on the Achieve Now, oh, that's a horrible picture. My kids look very happy there. So I've got this resources. So this is achievenow.org.uk, and I have this resources new layout. And on here, in here, you will see I've got eBooks. I've got resources that you can just download, tips for effective revision, improve spelling test results, how to help children develop a love of reading, building confidence. So all of this is stuff you can download if you go onto the Achieve Now webpage and you go into resources new layout. And on the PowerPoint, that's what these look like. So that is a book, that is a book, that is an article. And these square things are all videos, and you'll find those on the Achieve Now YouTube channel. So here, I've got my Achieve Now YouTube channel here. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to organize them. So in the same way as I say here, learn to read, encourage reading, read to learn and revise. If you look at the website, the YouTube channel, you've got dyslexic screening, learn to read, encourage reluctant readers, reading to learn. So I've tried to organize the videos in exactly the same way as I have that arrow. So I use that arrow a lot to organize the different solutions. And I do this because if you just look at the amount of videos I've got in here, I've got a lot of videos. And so sometimes it can just be overwhelming. And too much information is hard to find the stuff that you really need. And so if I go back to the home, this first section in here tells you how the channel is organized and which technology you should be using first. So a big part of why I put this webinar on at the beginning of August is some of us, not all of us, have more time on our hands over summer. So maybe you've got an email from me telling you these resources existed, but you've not had time to have a look at them. So I thought I'd remind you again, these resources exist and you can go in and have a look at them. So they're in two different places. All the ebooks are on my webpage, all the videos are here, but when you are in my webpage and you look at any particular, say for example, how to build confidence in dyslexic learners, I tend here to refer to videos. So there's the video. So there is an awful lot of sort of cross-contamination, that the YouTube channel will refer you back to the web page and the web page will send you to the YouTube channel. And I create videos because I'm dyslexic and I'm not very good in writing. And I guess an awful lot of the people that I'm trying to reach are also dyslexic. And if you're like me, if you want to know how to do something, you look for a video, you don't look for something to read. So that is a quick introduction. So now if I go back here, if you want to get more information about helping children to read, well, I think how to help depends on the age of the child. So this arrow tends to be, you start with the younger children, and as they get older, you tend to have these solutions. So if you're trying to teach a child to learn to read, I've got this ebook. If you're trying to encourage, and I've also got videos in that section as well, I just haven't included them here. If you want to encourage reading, I've got an ebook and I've got lots of videos. If you want to talk about reading to learn, that is basically having the device read to you rather than having to read it all yourself. And I talk about this an awful lot in the previous webinar. So if your child struggles to read, you need to go and have a look at those because it will really, really help you. And then finally, in exams, you can have things read to you. And I've got a web page that tells you all about it. And I've got a video that tells you all about it. So that's everything I was going to show you. These are just copied from the other webinar. That's what the book looks like. So that's the outside and that's what it looks like inside. It's got lots and lots of, it's a PDF. So you click on these and they take you, this particular page is all about free resources to train parents how to help their children. It's amazing how much of it is available for free. And what I try to do is find the best resources and then compile an ebook. This is telling you about 2 other pages of that book. And here are 2 Facebook groups that are really, really good and really supportive. And even if you're not a fan of Facebook, but for keeping up with friends, I would recommend it just as a free resource to find out about how to support your child. It's absolutely brilliant. It really is. And so these are another couple of videos that I've done all about using technology to help children learn to read. Here are videos and an ebook about helping children love reading or develop a love of reading. And then when I talk about learning to read as children get older, it's all about getting the device to read to you. And I find your 15 and 16-year-old will really resist this, but if they've been using it since they were in primary school and they're used to listening to stories and they're used to listening to textbooks, then it's really, really easy. But I find 15, 16-year-olds, not all of them, but some of them can be really resistant to new technology. They just want to do it the same as everybody else. And so here now I share about all the different ways every type of device will read to you, whether you're on the internet, whether you're in a Word document, on Outlook, and you can even get electronic textbooks. And I'm not going to go into that in detail now, but again, I've got videos on it. You can buy devices that read to you. So here is the scanning pen that a lot of people ask about, and you can get an exam pen, which is exactly the same as the scanning pen, but the exam pen doesn't have a dictionary in, so children can use it in exams. And that can be very, very helpful if the school doesn't have a computer reader in place. But I think, first of all, let's try and get schools to get computer readers in place. So this is a very easy access arrangement to get and can give a child a lot of confidence, because if you're anxious, then you're going to find it even harder to read. So they put in a headphone and they read, and they can have the questions read to them, but they have to be very used to using it. With all access arrangements, students really need to be used to using it. Here's some more information about electronic textbooks. I don't have time to go into this in great detail, but I think this is one of the best resources for dyslexic secondary students. I think it can really help them in so many ways, because they really struggle to take good notes in class, and they really struggle to read all the textbooks. But this is the textbooks can be read aloud to students, and then they can cut and paste the information from the textbooks and create class notes themselves if they can type. Otherwise they can't do it, and they can cut and paste the information into revision apps, and it just makes their life so much easier, and it makes all this information accessible even if they're not great readers. And it's actually supplied by RNIB, because that's the Royal National Institute for the Blind, but it's for anyone with a print disability. So blindness or vision impairment is a print disability, but so is dyslexia. And so are some other learning difficulties. So schools can get access to this for free. It is completely free, but it's a charity, so they don't have money to really promote themselves. And that's what I try to do. I try to promote the free things that people aren't promoting. How else can parents find out about them? And I have lots and lots of videos about this, because when it comes to text to speech, how you switch it on, how you access it, depends on the device that you're using. Again, watch my earlier webinar, but then this just shows you that if you've got an iPad, you do it differently to if you've got a Mac, and you do it differently if you've got Office 2016 or 2010 than if you've got Office 365. And so I've done separate videos for each, and I wouldn't attempt to do that in a webinar because you all need to know about different things, but you can go and watch that video yourself, and that will save you a lot of time. And I've already mentioned that I think the way forward is computer readers in exams. I really do. I think they can be the difference between a pass and fail. I think they can be the difference between a B and an A star. If you have the questions read to you, it's going to put a dyslexic in a much better position than if they have to do it all themselves. It's an easy access arrangement to get as long as the school is on board. But I think we've got to educate schools about the fact that it's actually, they've got to have a device. That's the thing that's going to hold them up if they haven't got enough devices. But if I was a parent in a school that didn't have enough devices, I would fundraise, and I would make sure they could buy the devices so all the children that needed them could have them. You can't buy a device for your child that then they use in formal exams. That's not allowed. It has to be a school device, because they have to ensure that the child can't access anything else that would put them an advantage in exams. So it has to be a school device. But I think we need to work together and help schools get the devices to help students. So I think that's everything I was going to talk about as far as access arrangements and reading quickly is concerned. I'm not going to stop for questions now, but if you've got any questions in those areas, then now is the time to think about those access arrangements and reading. And I'm going to go on and talking about spelling and grammar, because when our kids take formal exams, they will be marked down on their spelling and grammar. Now, I just think, well, you know, I can't spell, it's not a big deal, just take the hit on the spelling It's not a great deal. It might be 8%, it might be 9%, might be 13%. It differs by exam board and it differs by subject. So I can't tell you it's always this. It depends all the time. But I just feel like with my son, we just said, forgo the marks. You can't spell. You're not going to get any marks for spelling. I'd probably do exactly the same. But these are, again, how to help changes with age. So when students are younger, I have a web page that's all about how to improve spelling test results. Now, truthfully, I think the best way of doing well in a spell test is the old-fashioned way of write, cover, say. Write, say, cover. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but the old-fashioned way of writing, because forming a letter with a pen and pencil, or pen or pencil, is cognitively very different to striking a key. An A and a B and a C are all different, but when you're striking a key, it's all more or less the same. But children enjoy, on the whole, typing their spellings more, and you can gamify it more because you can play hangman and you can jumble up the letters, and so in here I show lots of apps that help, but in my heart of hearts I don't think it's the best thing to do, but I use them with my children because my kids just would not do it the old-fashioned way. They didn't want to do it, and they would learn their spellings this way. But I have to say, I think spell tests on the whole are just a weekly humiliation for dyslexic kids, and I think they can do an awful lot of damage. They're great for kids that can learn spellings, but for my kids, they learnt their spellings, they really did their best, but they never used them in their normal writing. They just went back to their old way of spelling. I just think they're one of these evils that we've got to help our kids get through, that it doesn't matter if you don't do well. Of course, you're not good at spelling. I was forever saying, your mum can't spell, your dad can't spell, we've done fine, don't worry about it. Because otherwise, I think it can be a huge anxiety. And I think where I see this more is where parents are not dyslexics and they're good spellers, and they just can't figure out why their kid keeps on spelling something wrong. And I think they push them a bit more and then feel disappointed. Well, you've got them all wrong again, or you only got 4 on 10. And I think we've got to be saying, oh, it's not a big surprise, whoop-de-doo, who cares? And I think that's more healthy for these children. But as I say, it's only my opinion. It's just like talking to another mother in Costa. I don't have any qualifications to say that's the right thing. So when it comes to spelling, when kids are doing their homework as they get older, then this is where typing is fantastic, because you get spell check. And so I've got videos here about how to use different functionality to help kids overcome problems with spelling, problems with grammar, problems with just proofreading their own work. It really will help to watch these videos. And again, when it comes to spelling in exams, it's worth, in fact, that's rubbish. Spelling in exams, you get no help at all, and a computer reader isn't going to help that. So I'll take that out because that was just a mistake on my part. So it's more preparing for spell test and spelling in homework, where you can get different help. Right, next one is enjoying learning. The way teachers teach is not, well, I can't say this for all teachers, because some teachers teach in a way that is really fab for dyslexics, but it's not the norm. Teachers tend to speak and impart new knowledge, new vocabulary, and expect students to write down what they're learning. Now, that's cognitively difficult for any child, because to listen and to write at the same time and learn new information is hard. But if you're dyslexic, you think, oh, I can't spell that. What did he say? And you're always a little bit behind rather than engaging in the lesson. And to me, a good teacher should provide some scaffolding notes for the student. And if they have a low budget and they can't print them out, then they email them to you, and it's your responsibility at home to print them out. And then the child can relax, listen to the teacher, and not need to worry about copying it down from the board and getting it wrong, because truthfully, a lot of our kids' notes are rubbish, and they've heard it wrong, they've got confused, and if they're using that as a basis for their homework and the basis for the revision, it's not going to do it. So one of the things that I try to do, and this is before kids get into secondary school, is I try to encourage them to love learning outside of school. What enthuses them? What do they enjoy? Is it to do with cookery or coding or something in history? But just something that and you say, oh, you remembered that really well. Oh, you're really clever. And they see there's more to learning. Learning is about taking new information and connecting it with stuff you already know and expanding your knowledge. And if you can get children to do that outside of school and get them to see you're really bright, but the way school teaches you doesn't suit your way of learning, then that really, really helps them. And what I've done is I've created an ebook, which I'm really proud of. It's all about online resources that help learners learn. So say they get home from school and they feel like, I haven't got a clue what that lesson was about. It was all about osmosis, and I know I can remember the word, but I can't remember anything about it. Well, it gives you the opportunity to go and find a video that explains it. Now, with videos, children can pause, rewind, watch it again. Videos are fabulous, and more there are online resources to teach our children. Again, I gave some examples in the earlier webinar. There are some dangers of learning from videos, and when you watch this video, it's like, well, that's obvious. Of course, that's a danger of learning from videos. But I have to say, I've seen so many kids fall into these traps that I do think it's worth spelling out the obvious. And I've got videos on improving note-taking, how to help kids take good notes in class. And one of the things is to email the teacher and say, look, my child is dyslexic. They are not going to be able to take great notes. Chances are you've already got a Word document or a Power document where you've organized your lessons. Any chance of creating some electronic notes that we can have? And if teachers did that, the marks would go up. But it isn't a way that they think of working at the moment. So I always felt like I had to educate teachers. And normally by the time my kids have been in the school for a while, most teachers were supplying my kids with electronic notes that they could then listen to and cut and paste into their homework. And if not, I got electronic textbooks. But these are all videos I would recommend to find out more. And then I think this is one that a slide I stole from the last webinar where I talked about this in more detail. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was working memory. So not all, but a lot of dyslexics struggle with working memory. And it is an area where the better brains than me argue whether working on your working memory as a kid, whether it's beneficial or not. And I can't help thinking it is. I can't prove it. As I say, people that are a lot more qualified than me would argue. What they would say is, well, they can play these games and it will improve their memory playing those games, but it won't necessarily translate into the classroom. But as a parent, I decided I would rather do everything I can to help my kids with poor working memory have a good working memory. If some neuro whatever scientists are saying it will help them, I'd rather do it. It's a bit like wrinkle cream. You don't want to be a prune at 45 and think, oh, I really wish I'd had some good moisturizer. And I feel, it's not expensive. So why not? Why not help your children? So I did something with my daughter that has poor working memory. I did jungle memory in the summer in between year 6 and year 7. And she saw how her working memory improved because it showed her in the game. And she went into secondary school feeling really good about herself because she'd done really well in that working memory game. And she actually has done really well in secondary school. Now, I'm not saying it's because she did that, but I feel like it all helps. It's all part of the armory. And I'll show you that they're not terribly expensive. But I've got more information here. So working memory is a better predictor of school achievement than IQ. 70% of kids with dyslexia have poor working memory. And I've heard different people say different things. Working memory can be improved up until the age of 15. I now believe they say it can be improved all the time, but your brain is definitely more plastic when you're younger. So I think it's better to try and get in there earlier while they've got more plasticity in their brains and use some of these working memory solutions. But there are games that you can play, and this website, Understood, is brilliant, and it just gives you lots of games that you can play that will help your children improve their working memory. We played a lot of these games over lockdown because my kids just enjoy them now. This is just more information about working memory that you can click on, and it will give you. These are the different working memory solutions. This is one by Tracy Alloway, I think her name is, and I think I put her in the further information. She's the sort of the guru. She used to be up in Sterling, but now she's over in Florida. She's got lots of books, but she developed this jungle memory, and it's the sort of thing you can do over the summer holidays. I've taken all the prices out because prices tend to change, but it used to be £40 for 8 weeks, I think it was. And it's one of these things that starts off really easy and kids love doing it, and as it gets harder they hate it. And so you need to have a bribe in place so that they will finish it, because they know, oh yeah, I'll do jungle memory, and then when they realize they hate it, then you go, well, you can only get that Xbox game if you finish it because you said you were going to. So that's one. I've also used Cognifit with my students. I would use that with older students, secondary students maybe. I do jungle memory for younger, Cognifit for older. The reason why I went for Cognifit was because Lumosity, one, was more expensive, but two, at the time you had to be over 13 to use it, and I was using it with students in years sort of 7, 8 and 9, so I didn't use that. CogMed, you've got to be trained up to use, so it's got to be the school. Or you've got to go to a CogMed specialist, but I just thought I'd make you aware of it. And when I talk in regular forums, I normally say, speak up if you've used it, say if it's good, say if it's bad. And CogMed is one of these where some Senkos go, oh, we had fantastic results with that, we were really pleased with it. And someone else goes, yeah, not so much. So I haven't got any personal experience of it, but I just thought I'd make you aware of it. What do they look like? They really do gamify them. On the whole, kids start off loving them, and it's only when they get hard they don't like them. This is what working memory, jungle memory looks like. They're all about saving the monkey. One's from being drowned, one's from being squashed. I can't remember what the other one is, but this poor monkey is going to get it if you don't do the game. So that's what jungle memory is all about. We've got Lucid again. That's something more that schools use than at home. It's really, really cost effective for schools. And Lumosity, that's the one that's like an app on your phone. And I didn't take the prices off on this one, but I wouldn't trust those prices because prices change too much. I shouldn't put them on. And then these are some little apps that you can use. I think this one was created by a Senko, just to help children with their memory. So these are just some ideas. I always worry when it says in-app purchases. So I've warned you here, it could get expensive. So why I've left that in, I don't know. I don't agree with in-app purchases. So why don't I just do that now? And then no one will think I think it's good. Okay, it could be good, but I don't like in-app purchases when you've got children. Okay, the biggest problem with doing a working memory solution with your kids is they don't always finish them because they get fed up. So you have to work out, like, do it in the holidays, because it's too hard to do as well as your normal homework and going to school and sports clubs. So it's definitely something I would do over the summer holidays, and you need to think about it in advance, and you do need to think about a whopping big reward to make sure that they finish it. So that's everything I was going to talk about with working memory. And then the other thing is they have to write in their exams, unless they're lucky enough to get a scribe, which is a difficult access arrangements to get. So all students, we don't do any verbal exams. You know, you can't do your GCSEs and go in and talk to the chemistry teacher about what you learned about chemistry. You have to write it, and it has to be marked. So anything we can do to help our kids get their ideas down in a form that somebody else can mark is helpful. And these are all the different ways you can do it. We can help improve their handwriting. We can teach them to touch type. We can use something like Clicker, which they've got to be able to touch type to use, but that's like a word processor that's dyslexia friendly. You can use mind maps to help them organize their thoughts. And then in the background, you would want that to go into Word or Pages, so they're not having to replicate what they put in the mind map into Word. And then there's Dictation. Dictation is brilliant. It is the way of the future. It's what I use all the time. Although sometimes if I don't proofread it, I do make some mistakes because it's not perfect. But with children, I don't tend to show them dictation unless they're very young, and then I do, because it helps them overcome that blank page and they realize that they can tell stories. And what I do with dictation is I get it to write in a grey font, a very light grey font that looks cursive, so they can dictate, and then they can take that piece of work and then they can write over it if they want to. And they've absolutely produced a story, and it's completely theirs, and you know, because they're too young to type. Now with secondary students, if they learn to dictate, they probably never learn to type, because secondary students really don't want to learn to type on the whole. They think they already can. And so because you can't dictate in exams, not easily, it's not an access arrangement they give very often, because if you've got hundreds of children in an exam room, they can't all be dictating. So they've all got to be in a separate room. So it's a really hard access arrangement to get. Whereas typing, you can do in a big hall or a big classroom. So it's an easy access arrangement to get. So they're the options that are available. And I personally just think we need to teach all our children to touch type. And I talked about that last time, so I'm not going to go into that in more detail, but I'm just going to show you the advantage that speed can have. So this is a class. I just pulled this out of an Excel spreadsheet and I didn't have time to update it. But these are my children down here. So this could be child A, child B, child C. Didn't put their names in. And this was their writing speed. And these would be just typical writing speeds for kids. And here we see that after 5 lessons, the typing speeds that they were getting. So this child can now type 28 words a minute faster than they could write. This poor child can only do exactly the same. Bit unfortunate, the quicker you write, the harder it is to sort of double, because I was trying to get my students to double their handwriting speed. This student didn't manage it, but this student did. Now this student only managed to learn to type in 5 lessons, 1 minute, 1 word a minute. But even that, I say, if you have a 3-hour exam and you get 45 minutes extra time because you're dyslexic, that's 25% extra time, chances are you're going to be writing solid for 2.5 hours, because you're going to have a lot of thinking time, a lot of reading time. But if you have 2.5 hours of writing, if you could only write 1 word a minute more, that's 156 words, which equates to about an extra 10 sentences. So just with an extra 10 sentences, you can get a lot more marks. That could be the difference between a pass and a fail, a C and a B. And I happen to know that these students have gone on and done a lot better than this. This is what, when I was showing them, this is why you do it, because now you can write all these more sentences in your exams, and that helped motivate them to carry on learning to type. So that is why speed is important. I think in my other webinar, I talked about all the different help that you get if you type, and here I'm just talking about speed. And in particular, I'm talking about speed in exams, because while it's lovely to finish your homework quicker, when you have to perform well in an exam in a finite period of time, speed is super important. So I just want to highlight what I consider to be the winning combination for any essay-based exam. So I'm talking history, English literature, English language, anything that involves students having to write a lot, but particularly English language, because English language GCSE in the UK is an entry requirement for so many other qualifications. So if you don't have English language GCSE, it is incredibly life limiting. And I believe that if students have a computer reader and are a laptop user and able to touch type proficiently, this is a winning combination, because it enables a candidate to read the questions with confidence, so they're less likely to go off on a tangent answering the question incorrectly because they haven't understood it. And if they can touch type proficiently within that finite exam period, they will be able to type 2, 3, even 4 times faster than they can write. That is huge. They can also copy spellings from the question paper without slowing down, which is really, really helpful. And I think if they use both the computer reader and they're a laptop user, I think, dependent on the solution that the school is using as a computer reader, they could be able to listen back to their own work and therefore proofread it. So that is an incredibly winning combination. And why I mention it, because I want to think about students like my son, students who are bright but are not very literate. As I said, George was predicted 3A stars and he plans to go and study pure maths at university, but he could not do that if he did not have English language GCSE. And I'm sure other countries and other education systems have an equivalent that is really hard for students that are not literate to be able to pass. But George had all his access arrangements in place, and we had an English tutor who worked with him a lot before his exams, and as a result he got a 4 in his GCSE English language. Now 4 is the lowest pass you can get, but I am really, really happy with that. He was delighted because he hasn't got to keep on taking this exam, and he can go and follow his dreams studying maths without being held back. Now I have a friend whose son has taken English language GCSE 7 times. Doing that just crushes his confidence. He is a bright kid, but he is not literate, and the dyslexia friendly school that he went to did not encourage him to use a computer reader and did not have a laptop. He wasn't a laptop user and he couldn't touch type, and I believe this made a huge difference to what he could go on and study and the type of jobs that he could go for, because it is a life limiting qualification if you don't have it. I have covered all the subjects that I meant to cover, except for the biggest obstacle to success. And I have already told you what that is. And I'm just going to have a quick drink. I very often, I've got a bit wiser to this now because it's happened to me so often. But at one point, because I didn't have this problem with my kids, I had this with other people's children. I have found technology that helps in all these different areas. And when I showed them to my children, my daughter didn't go from being a D student to an A star student. She went from being a D student to a C student and thought, oh, well, maybe I'm not as thick as I thought I was. And then she used a bit more technology and she went to a B student and she thought, oh, this is great. So I didn't find it hard with my children to get them to adapt this technology. So I've taught this to parents, I've taught it in after school clubs, and I think, there you go, you're set up for success, off you go. And then I get these children going, I'm not doing that. I don't want to type. My friend's not typing. I'm not going to listen to electronic textbooks. And I just think, why? And it's because by the time I was working with them, they'd already decided that they were thick. They weren't going to achieve anything in exams, and so they might as well have a nice time with their friends and be popular and not rock the boat in any way, shape or form. And I found it one of the most frustrating things, and I kept thinking, I've got to work with children in primary schools. So in primary schools, they're used to listening to their books and they're used to typing, and they kind of see that, oh, I do much better when I do that. And then they just carry that on into secondary school rather than just starting in secondary school, because the resistance I got almost all the way through, and not with every student, don't get me wrong, there were always students that were really engaged and grateful and happy, but it wasn't the majority. I would say it was about maybe 40% were really happy and 60% were like, well, I'm not doing that. Why should I do that? And that was very, very hard for me. So I do think that it is the biggest barrier to success. So the sooner you start, the better. And this very simple graphic tries to explain why. Now, this isn't from any research. This is just my observation that as children get older, their brain plasticity decreases. Their cooperation decreases, the amount of peer pressure that influences. They no longer want to please you more than anything else, but they want to please their friends. And the pressure from work, pressure of work from school really starts to increase as they get closer and closer to their A levels. But also, you've got to work on student self-esteem before you can expect them to use all this different technology, because it's easier just to write than type. It's easier just to open a book and pretend to read than to listen to, you have to go and find your headphones, find your device, listen to somebody reading it to you. It's more effort. And unless they can see, listen, I'm bright and I just learn differently. And I'm gonna show them I can do it. I'm gonna surprise everybody with what great results I can get, because I'm gonna type my answers. I'm gonna listen to the questions. I'm gonna use a computer reader in exams. Until they feel like they're capable, they're not gonna do it. And I kind of show these performance spirals that I see. I see when kids are young, they find reading difficult, and they see their friends can read, and they feel a bit rubbish about themselves, and then that makes them more anxious about reading, which makes their literacy even worse. And then when it comes to having to write assignments and hand them in, I think a disproportionate amount of dyslexics spend long time really trying to get a decent piece of work in, longer than their peers, and then they get rubbish marks. This is what happened to my daughter. She just got rubbish marks no matter how much work she put in, and she just thought, oh look, I'm stupid, I'm not going to bother anymore. I can work really hard and get rubbish grades, or I can play with my friends and get rubbish grades. I'd rather be the class clown and get rubbish grades. So she just stopped trying, and she found alternative ways of being accepted. So that's the spiral I see. This is what I see a lot. As children get older, the more schools need them to read in order to learn, then the gap widens. And so I'm all about finding technology that says, look, forget what you can't do. This technology will do it for you, so you can just use your brain and use the technology to get it down on paper. What I say to students all the time is, there aren't really any jobs in this world that need you to have beautiful handwriting, write really quickly and legibly, and spell everything perfectly. You know, what people are interested in the real world is how innovative, how creative. Do you understand problems? Can you solve problems? And if our children's brains are good at that, so we just need to give them the tools to get it down on paper so people understand that. So these are the dangers. I think It's very easy to parent out of anxiety. I did that myself. I was terrified my kids would never get jobs, that they would never be able to read. And you make stupid decisions when you parent out of anxiety. It's good to get yourself to a position where you believe, like, they'll be fine, they're bright, we'll work this out, they're great, and that they feel that from you. I think criticizing and frustration with teachers, we need to work with teachers and help teachers. It's not their fault that the system doesn't teach them how to help dyslexics achieve, and it can be very frustrating. But if your kid is already feeling like, I'm not very clever, and my mum thinks my teacher's rubbish, so what hope have I got? My teacher's rubbish and I'm not very clever. I think we've got to help them feel like, yeah, between your teacher and me, we're going to sort this out. One of the mistakes I made was, my son couldn't read, but he managed to fool his teachers that he could, and he couldn't fool me. So I kind of went to battle to force him to learn to read. And I think with hindsight, I just should have left it to the school and kept my relationship with him as a mother, as opposed to, I will get you to learn to read. I think a big danger that helps, that really hurts a kid's self-esteem is, because they're not very good, we just give them more lessons and more lessons to catch up. And instead, they're not doing things that they enjoy, things that energize them. They're not having the opportunity to find out what they're good at. And I think whatever your kid is good at, really invest in it and help them see, my mum values this as much as the schoolwork. So sometimes parents say, well, we haven't found anything they're good at yet. And I understand that, you know, they might not be great at it, but if they enjoy it, if it energizes them, then make sure you invest in it and they see that you value it. And for the people that say, well, all my child ever wants to do is play computer games, I do have incredible sympathy. But what I try to do is I say, okay, you make a great game developer, you need to learn to code. And that's a skill that not all dyslexics are good at. I'm not, I'm rubbish. But my son, fabulous at coding. And a lot of the kids I work with are great at coding, and they're rubbish at, you know, at reading and writing. So it is one of the things worth trying, and it is really good to invest in what they're good at. So these are all the different resources that you can use afterward to just help you build self-esteem. I won't try to go into all of that now. And then I did say I would try just to marry these things up. The last webinar with this webinar, this is what I worked with on the last webinar, and this is how I organize my YouTube channel. So I definitely think, you know, knowing that will help you find stuff. Also, this is how I would work through my YouTube channel. I would look at how it's organized, and then I basically walk you through identifying where your child will get the most help. And if you think about, I've just done a quick arrow. If these are all the things we want our kids to do, this is the area that you'll find videos on my website. So here, that's how you take notes. That's what, to complete coursework, you've got to do lots of different things. This is just to help you find more information. This is where you get all information on how to revise. So that's everything I was going to show you. What I thought I might do now is I could ask you to let me have any questions you have. If you don't have any, I am perfectly happy. I can just go back. I think I have a poll while you're thinking about questions. It would be helpful for me to know which of those areas was the more helpful. So when I next do this, I'll know where to spend the time, because I've done them all very quickly. So if you can just tell me, you know, what was pertinent for you. And while you're doing that, I just want to finish off on saying that these were the objectives. I hope that you felt I've met them. I hope I've saved you a lot of time. I think I might have highlighted some issues, many that you probably already knew about, but hopefully I've come up with some areas where you can go and look to find solutions. And there is so much more information that you can find. if I can help you in any way, I am now breaking up for summer, other than my touch typing courses, just keeping the kids practicing over summer. But next academic year, you'll now get my monthly newsletters, unless you unsubscribe, which is fine. So you'll get a monthly newsletter. I have a Facebook group, which is a really quick way of sharing helpful information. Let's have a look what else. I've told you already I've got a website that's got free resources. I've told you already that I've got a YouTube channel, and I do remote consultancy, both for families and for schools. And one of the things that's worked really well with the remote consultancy is I can record it and then you can watch it afterward, which is really helpful. I do student training. So I've just finished doing a lot of touch typing for academic success. I always try to do this at the beginning of the holidays so children can practice when they haven't got any schoolwork. I'm going to do more parent training now, but teaching them what to do with their kids, and then coming back the next week and talking about, well, how did that go and what else could you do instead? And it's almost like, rather than just having a remote consultancy for one family, having a group of parents that have got the same issues, and then I can give direction, but we can all support one another. So they're my plans for next year. And something that this is just telling you a little bit more about the remote consultancy and how it works. Is my remote consultancy, it's about the same as a dyslexia tutor, but you kind of just have 1 or 2 sessions, and it's all about setting you up so you can help your child, or setting your child up so they know what to do themselves. It's not like an ongoing thing. It's not like every week. It's just a one-off. And maybe then when they go into secondary school, you might want me again because they have slightly different needs. But that's all the information. And something that I would really appreciate is, I always just want to get the word out there to share this with other parents. And apparently the thing that I need to do is better search engine optimization, and that will improve if you give me Google reviews. So I would really appreciate that. So again, I am going to just stop now. It is 21:16. I will just have a little read through. So if you want to go and get a drink, how about I start again in 5 minutes, or which is 21:23. Just want to do 5 minutes to read through. It doesn't look like there's that much there. So if you want to get off, I will not be offended. It's late. But if you want to stick around and listen to answers, I will do my best to answer them. There aren't that many. It didn't take me that long, but I shouldn't start answering them yet until people come back. I think it's just you and me now, Colette. I can actually. Why don't I stop the recording? So stop recording.